Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm talking about the new moon in Pisces on the 17th of March at 1:11 PM Universal Time, and highlighting some of the key themes that this new moon gives us an opportunity to work on. Now, with Pisces, it's the last sign of the zodiac, so part of it is about closure and letting go of the old so that there's space for the new. It's letting go of the need to control things and letting go of attachments to things. So Pisces is pure spirit. It's not a sign that is easily malleable to the ego in any way, shape or form. If anything, Pisces is more about dissolving the ego, dissolving the boundaries and the need for control in order for us to embrace our true spiritual nature. And obviously this takes a degree of courage, because we live in a world where we're conditioned to operate from the ego or mistake our ego as our sense of self. But Pisces runs in direct conflict with that, because Pisces, or the energy of Pisces, shows that the ego is actually an illusion. It's not who we are. So this is a version of, or sense of self-identity that we need to let go of. Now, Pisces also deals with things like forgiveness, of developing tolerance for other people, to developing compassion and universal love. So these qualities can only really be given to other people if we can develop it within ourselves. So part of the new moon in Pisces may be reflecting on, where do we struggle with things like universal love? Where do we struggle to show ourselves compassion? Where do we struggle to forgive people, and why? And what do we need to do in order to let go of these struggles? How can we learn to overcome the human tendency to struggle to make things happen, to keep trying to push things where we think they should be going, when actually the answer to developing these qualities is surrender. It's learning to trust that there's a higher power, there's a higher spirit guiding everything. And if instead of trying to make things happen our way and constantly fighting against external resistance, if we allow this higher guidance to show us a better way of doing things, to show us how we can achieve our goals without having to try and force things to happen, then we operate with true power, because we're not trying to make things happen against the flow of things. We're letting the flow show us how to make things happen. Pisces also deals with enlightened states of consciousness and achieving states like universal love, compassion, mystic trances and deep or profound connections with spirit, where we don't necessarily have to engage in a specific discipline, though this can be helpful, but we just have that intense or connection with spirit. We feel it flowing through us. We feel alive, we feel joyful to have this energy going through us. And Pisces also deals with things like spiritual practice, so this may be a time where we decide to engage in things like meditation. We may decide to give yoga a try if we're that way inclined. But there's various other spiritual practices. These are just a couple of common examples that most people have heard of. There'll be other ways or other forms of spiritual practice that we may feel a desire to pick up and use them as means of connecting with our spiritual side, of understanding our spiritual nature, which is our true nature, and letting that spiritual energy flow through us, so that we then become a vessel for the universal love that is all around us. But for any of this to happen, we have to face our own need to control things. We have to face where we attach to things the way they are, or where we attach to doing things a certain way, or attach to certain mindsets, because attachments are what block us from connecting with this energy. They're what stop us from engaging with the flow and trusting that the current will take us to the right place. It doesn't mean that we just surrender and become irresponsible. It just means that we allow wisdom to guide us, rather than trying to make things happen the way we think they should, which may not actually be the most beneficial way for us. There may be a better way to do things, and if we would only just open up to higher power, high guidance, and let it show us through our intuition that there's another way that we can achieve our goals that is more beneficial, it's more aligned with truth, will allow us to maintain our integrity, and will not violate other people or create karma for ourselves. So another area that Pisces deals with is the sense of victimhood, or the clinging on to old wounds that we, for whatever reason, we didn't want to deal with it when those wounds happened, so we buried it in the unconscious. But eventually those wounds will resurface again. They don't go away, they just get stored in the unconscious. And with the sun going through Pisces, at this point we may find that old wounds or old ways that we believe that we're a victim come up, and this is where forgiveness comes in to help us overcome these tendencies or these desires to hold on to a sense of victimhood. Because whilst we remain or allow ourselves to be a victim of circumstances, we will never be empowered in any way. We'll never understand how to transform things, and we'll always be stuck where we are. Whereas if we have the courage to face the attachments to old wounds and understand why they're there, we can let go of them. We can relinquish wounds from our sense of identity. We can free our sense of identity from whatever wounds we've been carrying from the past, and by letting go of these wounds, we invite Spirit in to heal that void within us and empower us to take greater charge of our lives. Now, in terms of aspects to this new moon, the ruler of the new moon in Pisces is Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces, so the Pisces energy is very strong right now, and as such we're going through a key period where we need to have the courage to let go of the way things have been, to let go of old ways of being, let go of the old status quo, and let go of old paradigms, in order for us to create a new one collectively that honours each individual, honours a spark of divinity within each person, and encourages the best version of each person to emerge. But this can only really happen if we do the same thing for ourselves. We don't strive to become the best versions of ourselves through stripping away everything that's false, everything that's based on illusion. Then we can't really expect things around us to change. So we have to become the agents of change. We have to be willing to let go of old cherished notions, old cherished attachments, and realise that there's another way to do things. But if we want to become the best versions of ourselves, we have to let go of these illusions and allow a high consciousness to guide us. We have to have the courage to surrender to intuitive guidance rather than relying on doing things in a controlled manner, because that's how it's always been. Because a lot of things that we've taken for granted, we're now seeing the unforeseen side effects of it that aren't particularly pleasant or aren't healthy and can be outright damaging in some ways. If we continue or cling to the illusion of things being okay as they are, or trying to keep things going for as long as possible, it just makes the eventual crash worse. So if we can have the courage to let go of holding on to how things are and trust in the high guidance of Spirit to show us a new way of being that is empowering for us, empowers the people around us as well, and allows us to achieve a sense of enlightened community. But it's down to each person or each individual to achieve that themselves. It's not something that anyone can force upon us. It's a process that's unique to each individual. We're all wired differently, but we all have certain characteristics in common. And if we can embrace Piscean qualities of empathy, of compassion and universal love, then we can become a positive influence or a gentle, loving influence that can help encourage other people to make the transitions that they may know that they need to make, but they're struggling to do it out of fear of what other people think. But if we can become compassionate individuals, if we can develop those qualities within us, first give them to ourselves so that we understand them, so we know how it works, we know what it feels like and how to achieve compassion, because only if we can't give it to ourselves, we can't give it to another person. So it's important that we work on ourselves first, because if we become the best versions of ourselves, then people around us will automatically benefit, because we're not draining ourselves chasing something that isn't beneficial. We're becoming strong empowered individuals who can then be better placed to nurture others. With the new moon conjunct in a loose conjunction with Chiron, this is also an opportunity to observe where do we still hold on to the wounds of disconnection. So where do we engage in things like addictive behaviours that we need to let go of? What addictions do we have? Is it to hard substances? Is it to sweet foods? Is it to people? Is it to activities that aren't beneficial? So it's looking at any kind of addictive tendencies we have that are born out of that feeling of separation, that feeling of abandonment from a higher power, when the fact is the higher power is always there for us to connect to, but we cut ourselves off from it through issues like not believing we're worthy of love, not believing that we deserve to feel a sense of belonging, and believing that there's something inherently wrong with us or inherently bad with us that means that we're not worthy of love. But if we hold on to these mindsets, then we'll continue to engage in dysfunctional and self-destructive behaviour until we hit a point where we just hit rock bottom, and the only thing we can now do is surrender. If we learn to release the wounds now and embrace universal love, allow it to flow through us, as alien as it may feel to begin with, if we can learn to receive that unconditional love, receive compassion, we can then give it to other people, because we know that we're worthy of that love and belonging, and we understand how it feels, and we can then give it to other people. It's only through working on ourselves that we can achieve this. Now we also have a weak sextile mind from Pluto in Capricorn, and this is asking us to be real. It's asking us to address our attachments to the status quo and figure out where do we need to let go of attachments. Where we may be pursuing a project or a goal that isn't actually right for us, and where we trying to seek power through controlling other people instead of the true power which lies with personal integrity, where we learn to be true to who we are, we learn to be our authentic selves and become that in a public way. So we're not just being one person in our private lives and wearing a mask in public. Pluto is asking us to strip away falsehood, to let go of any attachments to goals that aren't aligned with who we are, aren't true to who we are, and learn to embody who we really are, to be our true self and be authentic. Because if we try and keep wearing masks, eventually circumstances will inevitably happen where the mask slips, and then we feel really uncomfortable because people are now seeing a side of us that we may not be comfortable with. If we can heal our shadow side, if we can release our shadows and elevate ourselves through self-empowerment, through self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, then we can become authentic individuals. We can be our true selves no matter where we are, and people may not like it, but at the end of the day we can only ever be ourselves. So if other people don't like who we really are, that's their issue. It's not our responsibility to try and mould ourselves to other people, because let's face it, if we try and fit in with everyone else's expectations, all those expectations are conflicting, and we just end up exhausted, tired, struggling to figure out who we are. So this is something that we may also need to let go of, and the new moon in Pisces is an opportunity to do this. And with Jupiter in Scorpio forming a trine, this is an opportunity to release attachments, to go deep into the subconscious mind, where we hold onto emotional attachments, we hold on to maybe grudges, old hurts, resentments, we may even be holding on to guilt in some cases, or shame, and these are things that we have to transform in order to empower ourselves. And with Jupiter going through this area, the unconscious is being made conscious. Jupiter's retrograde as well, so all that energy is being turned inwards as it is. So this is a time for facing our internal world, so facing the emotional attachments that cloud our judgments or cloud our perceptions, and release old pains through the power of forgiveness, because forgiveness isn't about condoning what the other person's doing. Forgiveness is an ultimate act of self-love, because it doesn't mean that you forget what happened, you just don't allow what's happened in the past to dictate who we are or hold us a slave to the past. So through forgiveness we heal ourselves and we relinquish old attachments that act like weights on our back, that don't help us in any way, will actually impede us for when we want to start anything new, because old perceptions will be clouding our judgment and we won't be able to see things clearly. And lastly, we have Palestine and Taurus also in a slight sextile with the new moon, which is quite weak, but this sextile shows us or prompts us to maybe spend some time in nature where everything happens in its actual natural timing, and also it's prompting us to kind of remain grounded, so we don't just float off into the ethers, we don't get lost in illusion. It prompts us to be grounded, to remain in touch with the physical world around us. It may prompt us to look at ecology and understanding how we're connected with the environment, so it serves our interest to try and maintain the environment and protect it or keep it clean. But spending time in nature can be very grounding, and this is something that we sometimes forget to do. We forget to spend time in a natural setting or in a quiet setting where we're not running around doing everything like mad. We're just spending time in quiet, we're getting back in touch with that natural rhythm that we all have, and through spending time in nature, this is another way of feeling that connection with spirit. It's all around us, but natural environments often have a way of opening us up, of helping us to release that stress, to put things into perspective, because we're the only ones that are rushing around worrying about things that in the long run may well be inconsequential. When you spend time in nature, you realise that a lot of things in life really aren't as important as we make them out to be, and getting grounded, spending time in a natural environment and allowing us to put things into perspective can really help us to de-stress, become grounded, become open and relaxed, and more likely to show kindness and empathy towards one another, rather than snapping at one another because we're stressed and not really doing anything to control it. So there's a lot to take on board there, but ultimately the new moon in Pisces is a major opportunity for us to let go of things, to release attachments, to release negative behaviours, release any tendency to view ourselves solely as a victim, and as a result not bother to do anything to empower ourselves. And it's an opportunity for us to become much more intimate with our spiritual nature, which is our true nature. An opportunity to let spirit flow through us, to feel that universal love, feel compassion, give it to ourselves first so that we top ourselves up with this energy. But if we keep doing that constantly, the energy will inevitably flow out of us and help other people by virtue of being in our presence. If we don't take the effort to keep ourselves charged up, keep ourselves energized through spiritual practice, then inevitably external circumstances will drain us, because we're not doing anything to keep ourselves energized, to maintain our own well-being, and we end up suffering, and we can end up engaging in martyrdom behaviour where we keep helping other people but we believe they're taking energy from us, when actually what's probably happening is we're just constantly giving and not spending time working on ourselves to top the energy up so that we can continue to give. So the more we can look at spiritual practices that will aid us, that will keep us feeling connected to our true selves, the more the positive qualities like compassion, universal love, psychic sensitivity, intuition and kindness will naturally develop, because these are traits that will have potential to develop quite strongly, but it requires us to release the attachments, to release the veils of illusion that lie between who we think we are and who we really are. So this is a time for us to dissolve the illusions, to get real with ourselves and realise that We are all individually responsible for how our own lives go and how we live our lives, but we can all make life a lot easier for ourselves if we learn to trust intuitive guidance, if we learn to accept there's a high picture unfolding that no one knows the full picture. It's just far too vast, but if we trust that things are happening for our higher good, and we remain humble and open to intuitive guidance, then we can make our lives a lot easier because we trust ourselves, we trust our instincts, and we let them guide us, while still obviously utilising logic, because that's a key part of life as well. It's necessary for certain things, but it doesn't help with everything. We need that balance between logic and intuition in order for us to have our minds operating at its best. But the more, with the new moon in Pisces, it's also a spiritual house, so the more we can let go of the past, the more we can free our spirits from attachments, the more we can boost our own mental and emotional health through bringing the spirit into play and healing the spirit, so that the mind and body follow suit. So there's a lot to take on board. I hope that the new moon in Pisces brings you a key opportunity for transformation, an opportunity to achieve significant healing in each of our lives, and become the best version of ourselves through shedding what isn't true, just letting go of the illusions, and allowing our true self to radiate through. So, take care. May you have many blessings.